Hi, my name is Terry J. Amon, and welcome to this, my 21st episode of Video Fuzzy. In this installment, I welcome talented writer and actress Kim Files to explore the concept of quarter life. I cross a new milestone in my current collection, and in what I've been watching, I cry foul on American crime story, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, just one of a half-dozen shows that have been piling up on my DVR lately. Welcome to the show.
He doesn't have that on video, does he? We'll find out together on Video Fuzzy.
Starting out, I wanted to extend a warm Video Fuzzy thank you to Fei Wu, the Fei's World podcast. She recently shared comments of me and a couple dozen other podcasters about what keeps us going in our podcasting efforts, past the plateau that seems to hit some folks after about half a dozen episodes or so. I thought that question was so interesting. I said for me, quote, I've still got 2,400 plus DVD transfers from VHS tapes to catalog, some dating back from the 80s. This podcast tracks my progress on finding out what's on all these things, and needing something to talk about every 2 weeks motivates me to keep at it. Other commenters, I hope it's okay to share from their Facebook responses, cited passion for their topic and for podcasting itself, including podcasting and social media guru T. Morris, who cited the love of it, the genuine love of getting on the mics and riffing about a subject. Podcaster Robbie Celestin said, I feel great after each episode. It's almost therapeutic. That joy keeps me going. And podcaster DJ Starsage said, there's a saying, dance like no one's watching. Podcast like everyone's listening. Great question, Faye. Cool responses, and that was on episode 140 of the Faye's World mini-episode titled How to Embrace the Plateau as a Podcaster. Check it out. Correction. Error. While cataloging the 9th episode of Will on TNT, I was able to catch the name of Presto, young pickpocket turned rent boy in drag, played by Lucas Rolfe, who I misidentified as George Sear in my Video Fuzzy episode 20. Sorry for my misidentification. I found this show to be seriously difficult to track for information online, and trying to match him via actor profile thumbnail on IMDb led me astray. I needed for someone on screen to name him directly and audibly, which I wasn't finding anywhere until Will introduced him to someone in episode 9, Play the Devil. Then it was a simple matter of matching character listing to actor name on imdb.com. In other misstatements, I called the season 1 finale of Claw's Batcrap, which was not its name, nor was it exactly the name of episode 5 of that show, what was called something else. But the season 1 finale of Claws, which I did get to watch this past week, was actually called Avalanche. More on that in a bit. Now onto my Friday night feature, an unholy NBC web-to-broadcast attempt called Quarter Life.
Friday night feature.
The scene opens on Dylan, a 20-something brunette with ambivalent hair and makeup in low lighting, talking to the camera on her laptop, so immediately we know she's deep and smart and interesting, and we're right, she's a writer. She's such a writer, she writes in her spare time, and it's so good, even her first draft material is pulling us into her latest entry on Quarter Life. So what the heck is Quarter Life? Well, it's a blog site, host to a video blog, or vlog, where Dylan, played by Bitsy Tulloch, talks to the camera and also includes video clips of her friends and talks about them and posts it without their permission. She's pretty sure it's okay because she thinks Quarter Life is a beta site no one has access to, but one of her friends, Lisa, finds out about it because her entire theater class is on that site and has seen Dylan call her essentially an alcoholic slut. Dylan also calls out her longtime friend Jed for being in love with Deborah, his best friend Danny's girlfriend, which lays in an undercurrent of drama and sets up some other heartbreak as well. Elsewhere, she says, it's my curse that I can see what people are thinking, what they want to say and can't say, who they want to be with, and what good does that do me if nobody can see me? Oh, we see you, Dylan. By the end of the episode, everyone can see you. Deborah wants to move in with Danny, and Danny is dragging his feet. Danny's best friend and creative partner trying to break into local commercials, Jed, is, as Dylan called him out earlier, in love with Deborah. It's their friend and co-producer Andy who tells Jed about Dylan's latest entry, where she drops the bomb about Jed being in love with Deborah. Meanwhile, Deborah's seen it and calls him on it. Jed opens up to her in the most devastatingly awkward, cute way possible, and Deborah makes a move towards him. Meanwhile, Danny's got roaming eyes trying to hook up with the car sales girl that they're working with on their commercial. At work, Brittany, Dylan's boss, pulls a total Cinderella stepsister, dumping a ton of work on Dylan so she can't do the mock-up of Attitude Alternative, her idea that Brittany took credit for in the editorial meeting, which is a thing there's no time for at a magazine. I mean, there are editorial meetings, of course, but they don't involve everyone down to glorified interns, which is where Brittany places Dylan in the org chart. Seriously, everyone in that room needed to be someplace else. Dylan would literally have discovered Brittany had stolen her idea, run with it, and taken credit for it when it appeared under her byline in the next issue, but oh well. But she determines that if she's too scared to speak up for herself, then nothing will ever change. Then after, oh my god, in and among and around and through a lot of interpersonal emotional 20-something mission, god, that was frankly a lot of unpacking to do for a pilot episode. Dylan peer pressures Lisa to perform at a karaoke night and tap into her power, which she does, and she's amazing. I mean, she's studio recording level amazing. Young people are just amazing. It's what they are, because there's no point in them being anything else. Nothing but potential. It's total jealousy. Meanwhile, the out-of-control finding yourself, the whole being broke all the time, well, I think I put it best when I wrote about it in my TV column in 2008, referencing a 2006 work by then-student playwrights Kim Quill and Nicole Twigney. The idea of this is from my column. The idea of quarter life derives from the concept of midlife, as in a midlife crisis. Quarter life crises are different, but just as real, and largely stem from having way more creativity than opportunity, and passion than common sense, and all the joys of getting out and starting life on one's own, generally with more drive and energy than money and stability. As milestones go, it tends to be a great time to stop and take stock. Physiologically, the decision-making areas of the brain are completing their development, and those grand idealistic adventures of youth that never quite seem to gel get set aside in favor of more practical paths." End quote. When I saw this pilot episode come up in my classic collection, initially I couldn't place it. I mean, NBC had promoted it pretty heavily and then abruptly canceled it after Wikipedia reports shockingly dismal ratings, burning off the remaining 5 episodes on Bravo. Sitting here talking to you right now, I can't tell you if I managed to record them or not. I'm sure I'll find out soon enough. When the episode opened on Dylan talking to the camera, that was okay, but when I heard David Walton's deep, warm, chuckly baritone open on the second scene as Danny, I knew that I was going to be featuring this project as my Friday night feature. David Walton in Quarter Life is, of course, the very same David Walton in 9JKL, and I had completely spaced this, but the same David Walton in Brockmire? IFC's Brockmire, team manager Amanda Pete's manipulative petro-corporate ex who was trying to kill off minor league baseball team the Morristown Frackers for reasons. Wild. Anyway, I got pulled in and enjoyed watching these young people, these earnest, hapless, hilarious young people. One of them, Andy, the video editor, in a promo for an episode NBC never actually aired, said, "I amuse myself, therefore I am." Well, of course, who can forget from Descartes' original Latin, ego ludo, ergo sum. And as I watched them strut and fret their 42 minutes on the stage, I traced memories from the first time I saw this show, and when I wrote about it in 2008, and I reached out to Kim Quill, Kim Files now, who'd co-written a full-length student theater production with the same name a year or so earlier. Her Quarter Life explored some of the experiences of 20-something, that stage of, well, she can sure tell you herself. Kim, go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Kim Files. I am a graduate of Minot State University in Minot, North Dakota, and probably my greatest accomplishment, let me scratch that, without a doubt, my greatest accomplishment, the thing that I was most proud of in my time as a student there, was writing and directing a full-length play called Quarter Life at the Black Box Theater at Hartnett Hall. I began writing the project probably when I was about 22 or 23 years old. When I first started writing the project, I wasn't really doing any writing with the intention of sharing it with anybody, or turning it into any kind of performance or public spectacle of any kind. Everything that I was writing down at that time was just to get things out of my head. The idea for the play was mostly just focused on some of those general experiences that, things that we think of as universal experiences, things that, college age people talk about, like love and life and death and all of those things that happen to all of us eventually. The title of Quarter Life kind of came about because I was talking with my very best friend in the whole world, Nicole Quigney, with whom I wrote the script. The only collaboration I've ever done, by the way. This is something that absolutely would not have happened without her. We were talking about how we were almost 25 and all of the things that our parents had accomplished by the time that they were 25. And, when they were 25, they had jobs and they had their own houses and I mean, not just jobs, but like careers, things that they were going to be doing for the rest of their lives. And they had children and they had homes and they had cars and they had, mortgage payments and insurance. And at the time I was living in her house because I had just moved out of an apartment. There were some personal things going on. And she was living in a house that she was renting from her family, so was getting a good deal. So here we were, these two broke chicks living in a cheap rented house together and saying, okay, we're almost 25 years old. Where the hell did we go wrong? Our parents had it all together by then. And then we sat down and kind of looked at, looking back on it now, no, our parents really didn't have it all together.
You said this was kind of for your own, just to get it out of your head. What led you to develop it into a full-length production?
The real motivation, I guess, to write it all down was we had a third friend whose name I'm not going to share, who was going down a path that was pretty concerning to us. You think about, 20, 25 years old and, people are going to go out and drink and party and make bad choices. You're supposed to make bad choices when you're in college. That's when you're supposed to have your fun and make your mistakes. And then, then you pull yourself together and you act like a grown-up after you're done with college, and that's how that's supposed to go. So we didn't feel like we had it was our place to say you shouldn't be doing those things because we were doing those things. But at the same time, we didn't want to encourage her. So we really started kind of pulling away. We were not emotionally mature enough to understand how to intervene in that, really. And honestly, as somebody who works in addiction services now, I can tell you that is still a very difficult conversation to have. So I don't want to make it sound like we decided to write it down and produce it so that we could, try to reach out and help somebody. It was very much just Nicole and I dealing with our lives, trying to get a handle on where we were and what we were doing. The basis of Quarter Life was these three women kind of trying to move on to the next stage in their lives. Like, okay, this is our, college age, most 25-year-olds, their college career is over. They should be starting in their new endeavors. And we were talking about these, we had these three women who were talking about moving on to those next stages and, being a grown-up and kind of trying to deal with things that had happened in their lives and understand how those experiences had shaped the lives that they were currently leading and what they were going to take from that to move on to the lives that they wanted to have. And the character that we named after our third friend, the character's name was Celia, had this big monologue about, they call it a quarter life crisis, and it's really only a quarter of your life if you're going to live to be 100 years old. I'm 25 and I don't think I've got more than a quarter of my life left. And she talks about how she's basically just going to have her fun and burn it all down at the end and damn the consequences.
So you'd been working on this for a while when NBC was developing their production. When did you hear, what did you think of when you heard about that?
So, in the process of making the arrangements to make the show actually happen, to go from finalized script to casting to even backing up further than that, just getting it on the schedule for the Black Box. Somewhere in the process of all that, somebody points out to me that, hey, did you know that this network is coming out with this TV show called Quarter Life? And I went, oh, of course they are. Isn't that just my luck that they would do that at the same time that this is happening? And had a little bit of a freak out about it for a few minutes. To be honest, probably for a few days at that time. And then thought about it and said, okay, well, I'm certainly not the first person who's ever used the term quarter life. That's not something that I came up with. So there's no reason to be concerned with some other entity using it too. Nothing new under the sun and all that. So I was vaguely aware of it when it came out. I had no idea. I still have no idea what it was about or characters or what they went through or any of that business.
Wow, I'd have been so curious, but cool. Yeah. Looking back on it now, it's 12 years later. What do you think about your show, the show you put together, you and Nicole?
I have thought back on the play, the script, the writing process, all of that, and what strikes me as odd, looking back and thinking about who I was then and who I've become, is how many things are really important to me now that weren't touched on at all in that writing process. As I mentioned, I now work in addiction services, and going back and looking at it now, I would love to approach it from a better informed perspective. Certainly the things that Lane and Michelle are talking about with regard to their parents' substance abuse, issues, definitely who they become reflects those experiences that their parents had. But we don't really touch on that with Celia, and I feel like I kind of missed the mark on that. There was a lot more in retrospect that I could have said about the relationship between addicted parents and addicted children. It was the furthest thing from my mind at the time. It surprised me that things like social and political concerns that are at the forefront of my mind most days of my life right now were not even on the radar when I was in college, and didn't make any appearance at all in any of that writing process. I certainly don't think less of my 22, 23, 24-year-old self for any of that. I think it probably just would have complicated things, and honestly it probably would have made for a much worse script to try to tackle all of those big picture issues in one hour and a half long sitting.
And your reaction to the project, thoughts on your project, what you were trying to say or felt you were trying to say, did you say it?
So there were a lot of things that we really thought were going to be stuff that had just happened to us that we thought would be interesting to people. Like, won't this be a fun little, kind of freak show? And it turned out to be that we weren't really telling anybody anything that they didn't already know. I think we learned more about ourselves through the process, sort of becoming part of this universal structure of, everybody's had these things happen to them. Everybody has felt this way. Nothing that you're going through is in any way new. Somebody out there has already been through it before. And that was why learning that, there's another show called Quarter Life coming out. Yeah, that's fine. Everybody experiences that, age range and experiences their own lives in unique and different ways, but really we're all part of the same journey. Everybody is moving toward the same outcome. We just all have a different journey. And a lot of the things that we experience on that journey are things that other people have already been through.
Wow. Thank you, Kim. Kim Files, everyone. So awesome to hear from you again. And thank you so much for helping me out with this.
Diving into the classic collection.
Following the premiere of Quarter Life, I see where I recorded a couple of ads that ran during a rerun of That 70s Show, specifically the Home and Garden Show, March 1st and 2nd in 2008, sponsored by the Minot Association of Builders and featuring information seminars on craft projects, home organization, flower arrangement, real estate sales, smart home technology, and HD TV. And then who should appear in a hopelessly local ad but the one, the only Miss Cara Mund, Junior Miss North Dakota 2008, appearing in an ad where she was hosting hosting a fashion fundraiser for the Make-A-Wish Foundation at Attitudes in the Kirkwood Mall on March 16th. Mund, of course, went on to become Miss North Dakota and then Miss America. She was so adorable in this ad, which featured her in a tiara. Why the heck did I record this? I guess so I could wonder years later, why the heck did I record this? My best guess is because I was features editor at the time for the Minot Daily News and wanted to maybe track down a few wins and wears on a few community events. Other fun finds include a scrap from the Family Guy Season 5 episode Peter's Two Dads, where Peter and the fam travel to Ireland to track down Peter's biological father, Mickey McFinnigan, featuring what I ended up recording here, the song My Drunken Irish Dad. I found where HBO showed Keanu Reeves and Robert Downey Jr. in Philip K. Dick's trippy live-action animated 2006 movie called A Scanner Darkly. Also tracking into view were episodes from the 3rd season of The Shield, the 1st season of Battlestar Galactica, the 4th season of Lost, a couple more season 1 episodes of the Showbiz Show with David Spade, and this Fox thing called Reunion, which tracked a set of 6 friends through a murder investigation that crossed decades, and its progression was equally glacial. Each episode covered another year of their lives, and the story hopped back and forth between present-day scenes and what these scamps got up to in past years. Written probably with an eye to mystery, nostalgia, dramatic reveals, and the sort of fractured storytelling a la Lost that a significant audience was telling producers that they'd put up with. This story bumped along, unwilling to draw the curtain back on much from one week to the next, until frankly, I didn't care much anymore who done it. The show had had promise, but in the end it was the producers of Reunion who had done it. They'd murdered several hours of my life I was never getting back for, well, not much, really. I'm pretty sure I archived every episode of the show that they aired, but as it progressed, I was more seeking an ending than I was answers. Oh, and going through this, it wasn't all bad. I found an episode where the White Stripes performed The Denial Twist and My Doorbell on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, and a music video Depeche Mode did for their song Precious. Also, I found an ad dating from 2005 for Coke Zero, so that was 13 years ago. I guess they've only started promoting it more lately because they're finally happy with it.
Current collection.
As I mentioned up there, yep, just reminding you because I know it's been a while at this point, I'm just full of words this time. I tracked another milestone this past week in my current collection where I broke into my new binder of DVDs. That's the one I'm currently filling, so pretty soon my current collection will pretty much be the same as my what I've been watching. I'll still likely differentiate them, though. I don't archive and catalog everything I watch, and there are a few shows that I'm just watching that are worthy of comment. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. First thing I found on this round of cataloging was a 2011 artist session with Fargo musician Brenda Weiler, which aired on PBS sometime last summer, it looks like. I've enjoyed Brenda's work since I first encountered her during a coffee shop concert she gave in Devils Lake, North Dakota sometime in the late 1990s. I just couldn't get enough of this girl with a guitar, which has always been deeply compelling for me. I mean, not everyone can do the singer-songwriter thing, but Ms. Weiler's talent was just an unmistakable light on the bleak northern prairiescape. Her intriguing, introspective lyrics hinted at joy in an examination of darkness, stubbornly seeking positivity when there isn't always evidence for it. Then transitioning to her more recent work, where she explored and worked through the loss of her sister to suicide. In 2011, she was gaining perspective, but the influence was still deeply felt, and the interview portions interspersed among her performance shared some insights. The performance featured a mix of older and newer pieces, and I appreciated how her performance was shaped by her experiences. Truly a wonderful find. Also among these discs, I encountered episodes of TNT's Will, as I mentioned above, and USA Network's production of The Sinner, and AMC's second season of Preacher. Quite a good summer storytelling, I thought. Also feeding into view were episodes from American Horror Story's 7th season, Cult, by Ryan Murphy on FX, and quite a bewildering array of movies, ranging among superhero exploits like Captain America and the Avengers, action-adventure features like Bruce Willis in Red and Red 2, and silly capers like Yogi Bear and Magic Mike XXL, both live-action pieces and at the same time both a little cartoonish. As I closed out my first binder, I found a few oddballs, including my first Frankendisc, F001, featuring stitched-together episodes of Psych and Touching Evil, and a copy of Trial and Error. I also have home burns of Trial and Error and The President's Show Episode 6 with the theme Loyalty. That one I recorded before I discovered that the episodes were all available on Comedy Central on demand, and I may have a much cleaner copy of that somewhere. That disc also features the camera phone burn I made of the MTV News report on the death of Joey Ramone that I mentioned in episode 15, so it was cool to see where I'd saved that one. Breaking into the new binder, I see where I saved the Season 8 premiere of Bob's Burgers, featuring fan art, or fart. Oh, and the CBS No Access premiere of Star Trek Discovery, and third season episodes from Superstore, the series resume of Will and Grace, and oh hey, the series premiere of Mark Feuerstein's Nye JKL, which I loved for its ridiculously over-the-top homage to classic sitcoms, including the scene when, after a discussion once of Final Resting Places, Quarter Life's David Walton as Dr. Andrew informs his parents, Elliot Gould and Linda Lavin as Harry and Judy, that rather than inclusion in the family plot, his wife, Eve, plans to be cremated. When? Judy asks with unvarnished delight. Hilarious, if very, very dark.
What I've been watching.
Shifting into my theme for this episode, since the late upload for the podcast last time and Ralph and my trip out of town last weekend, I've been navigating a bit of an episode pileup here, which is partially responsible for how long this one's going. Still with me? Awesome. For one thing, I'm calling foul on American Crime Story, The Assassination of Gianni Versace. This is not American Crime Story, The Assassination of Gianni Versace. This is American Crime Story, The Assassinator of Gianni Versace. The show isn't about Gianni Versace at all. We've had entire episodes where the only mention of the man was in the title. The show is about the self-indulgent thief, con man, and serial killer Andrew Cunanan. It's a comment on the state of gays in America that you can air a show about a gay serial killer and not have to post at the end of each episode #NotAllGays. Andrew sure is one special little snowflake, misunderstood, perhaps maybe the hero in his own story, except that he's always just doing and doing and doing and doing in this show. I mean, at what point is this boy, this beautiful, delusional, hated, feared, disgusting, completely unloved and unlovable, destructive, vindictive serial criminal ever going to face a mirror, face a camera, face... My God, from the first episode, the man has a sister with a rich husband and a beautiful life, family he's stolen from. How did these siblings end up on such divergent paths? I mean, when is he going to settle in for a moment of self-examination? I mean, he clearly has some thoughts. He's so conflicted when we first meet him with his book on the beach. He's forced to confront his poverty constantly, currying favor with rich, closeted gays who he then exploits and extorts. He's tearing up during a live, intimate stage performance of Amy Mann covering the Cars song Drive. These tiny flashes of a damaged, broken humanity suggest that there was a person in there once, behind the psychopathically clear, smiling ice-blue eyes, someone's little boy, someone who feels the loss, the damage he inflicts with his lies, his rage, his manipulation, outing military personnel during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I mean, more than the murders he commits, the damage he leaves in his wake. I mean, something suggesting that Andrew Cunanan is more than just a monster, and what's the basis for that insight? Now, I'm not downplaying the show's reasonably insightful exploration of the situation for gay people in the late 90s, the casual homophobic gay bashing in military and social situations, less accepting families, Cunanan's vindictive cruelty, outing Navy officer Jeff Trail, where outing someone to their CO can get them fired or worse, or outing someone to their parents can break a family apart. I mean, gays can serve openly now, and most, or at least more, workplaces just don't care. People do still get disowned, and every family is different, but having a gay son or daughter is just not the secret hidden shame it used to be. Ryan Murphy has told this part of the story through the knowing eyes of experience. But Versace was just Cunanan's latest and most famous victim. The show really isn't about him at all, and having identified this disconnect, I find myself wanting to know more about his killer, wanting to know what drove him in his violence, wanting there to be more than he was just hungry for fame, something that would... And I can't understand this motivation, really, but wanting there to be some rational basis for his murders. If he wasn't young, if he wasn't beautiful, if he weren't white, would I necessarily give any kind of crap about his motivations? Troubling. I want to see him caught. I want his crimes exposed. I want him to feel the shame and rage of the loss he's inflicted on people and his victims, the families of his victims. I want his victims avenged. And spoiler alert, Google does list him as having died in 1997, so at least he's probably not still bouncing around out there somewhere. But wow, this guy. In other viewing, I was blown away by this past week's episode of The Magicians, which brushed past the fairy-inspired coup d'etat in Fillory for a moment, so Penny could deliver a key and restore magic, which has died. We learned that quite apart from their stranglehold building a nascent army in the kingdom of Fillory, in this and other worlds, fairies are being enslaved and worse, some kept alive and slowly dismembered, ground up into magical powder, while powerful interests are hard at work keeping this a secret. Powerful storytelling. In TNT's The Alienist, a scene from the novel where Dr. Kreitzler visits a former patient in his prison was included for seemingly no reason other than to illustrate the uselessness of seeking context in psychopathic behavior. The episode opens with the psychiatrist, or alienist as they're called in the late 19th century, meeting with a former patient of his turned dominatrix to gain insights into the pain-pleasure dynamic, which he builds into his profile for the serial killer his team is seeking. John's sketchbook from the crime scenes turns up and cues the rank-and-file police into the team's operation, which Police Commissioner and reforming crusader Theodore Roosevelt is seeking to keep hush, particularly since the boys dressed as girls' modus operandi seems to point to one of New York's wealthiest and most powerful families. And it seems our killer has put pen to paper and written out a manifesto by which Kreitzler and his team can unlock more of his secrets. Most significantly, how his crimes coincide with significant days in the church calendar. More to the point, he seems to be onto them. Also, I've still got the final episode yet to watch of Waco, so I'll have more on that next time. But if the idea was to paint the government forces as feckless, callous, indifferent to procedure or human life, while portraying the Branch Davidians as sympathetic innocents overwhelmed by circumstances, goal achieved. Except that by my memory, the actions of the people in the compound, including remaining under siege for nearly 2 months, really only make sense if they are followers of a crazy charismatic cult leader, one who uses his last 10 minutes of generator to power a musical number. I mean, I recognize that the media provides its own filter, but yeah, my memory of events does not 100% jibe with the point of view taken by this story. That said, I'm sure the final installment will prove to be explosive, to say the least. In episodes I'm working through of Supernatural, Mr. Ketch, the enforcer sent by the British Men of Letters, teams up with San and Dean to help track and defeat Lucifer, who, among others, has possessed a hairband rocker, a cardinal, and, oh yeah, the President of the United States. That's after they took out the body of Nazi fanboy necromancer who became possessed by the soul of Hitler. Way to go, Dean! I mentioned last time that I'd been unable to watch the first season finale of Claws on TNT. At the time, our cable had been playing up on us, and ultimately it got so bad we actually had to switch out our DVR last fall. Remembering that was the case, I pulled up the TNT On Demand lineup, and sure enough, switching out the DVR did in fact reset my TNT On Demand lineup. I pulled it up last week, and lo and behold, I was finally able to watch the first season finale of Claws. Niecy Nash, as embattled South Florida manicurist Desna, escapes the abandoned amusement park through which her ex, Roller, is chasing her just as her team figures out where she is and picks her up. All is not well, however, since Roller has killed one of the Russians, and the Russians, in the person of Andrea Such as Riva, are targeting Dean Norris as Uncle Daddy and his Dixie Mafia operation.
Show them how we do it with the other Georgia,
Riva breathed, directing her henchman to kidnap Jen's daughter Brienne, leaving the other with a message on her forehead that reads, "Bring us Roller," and murdering Uncle Daddy's wife Joanna for good measure, ending in an emotional death scene in Uncle Daddy's arms. After an emotional reunion in which many secrets are revealed at the strip club, Desna is sent as a go-between to talk to Riva. She negotiates a deal and a meeting is planned by Riva at a retirement home filled with grannies in pink tracksuits. Uncle Daddy comes in with his entourage, and at first it looks like he's going to have to sign over his entire operation to Riva. He arranges a double cross, and it looks like he's gained the upper hand, until it turns out that the entire retirement home is armed and all the grannies are helping Riva, so it would appear that Riva's ultimately won this round. Desna goes back to the nail salon and offers to turn over management to Jen while she takes over operations at their Tony New downtown establishment. Jen refuses, as do they all, insisting that Desna stay put. It looks like that's the situation heading into Season 2. A lot of water and blood under the bridge, but everyone taking their place in the new arrangement. Looking forward to this show's return. Finally, and you knew I'd have to run out of shows to chat about eventually, this past week Ralph clued me into an adorable anime production on Crunchyroll titled Working Buddies, in which two kitties learn how to do new and different jobs at different shops in each production. One is eager to dive in and do his best. The other is less idealistic, but both want to do a good job. I saw half a dozen of these or so, and there is we should call it a range of management styles among the different supervisors they encounter, along with a mysterious, enigmatic koala bear who shares odd, sometimes untoward advice which they need to interpret. Speaking of which, the shows are in Japanese, but they've got subtitles. They're relatively easy to follow, and I thought they were quite a lot of fun. Thanks for sharing those with me, Ralph. And that should be just about plenty for this one. Thanks again to Fei Wu, and special thanks once again to Kim Files for sharing her insights on this. And I wanted to say, if something comes up in my catalog or this podcast that you want more information, disagree with, or anything you'd like to chime in on, please feel free. Feedback is always appreciated, and thank you for checking in on my video cataloging project. You can check out my catalog listing along with audio links at videofuzzy.blogspot.com and past episodes at Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Feedback is always appreciated. You can contact me through my blog or podcast sites or through my Video Fuzzy page on Facebook, or you can follow me at TJ Video Fuzzy on Twitter. For Video Fuzzy, I'm Terry J. Amon. Happy viewing.
It might be amazing, it might just be scuzzy. We'll find out together on Video Fuzzy.